them word of when they're coming down and perhaps call a special meeting to discuss and approve or disallow, whatever the case may be, their entry into the building on a specific date as was. Because then we would know exactly when, where, and how by the time of that special meeting.
Okay. Dave, I've got kind of a problem with that in the aspects that we're asking this architectural firm, who's probably busy, to be at our whim at a second special meeting as to whether or not we would or would not allow it. I would consider asking Chief Murphy that the building is now secured, correct, Chief?
Yes.
Okay, and I would think that if we utilize the same procedures that we did for the initial request to go in there and obtain personal items, that this company would be willing to sign those waivers and everybody else that go in there. And that way the date they can set up without having to call a special meeting, providing all of us are available and things like that. But the same conditions, because if I'm not mistaken, it's still classified as a dangerous structure.
An immediate hazard.
Immediate hazard, dangerous structure issue. So therefore, I would think that if those folks that are going to be getting access to that building, if they would release liability to the city, I think that decision can pretty much be made tonight and not hold them up for their planning purposes.
I agree with Don. We don't want to hinder this. I mean, if this will move the renovation of the building forward, we don't want to hinder it. So if we need to give approval now.
You guys would need to amend the resolution again, because the previous resolution, you guys made a specific time frame to allow them in. Rosalie, you were wanting access prior to them getting here, right? So you could kind of clean out that back area?
It would be nice
Okay.
to do
So you
some
guys-
starting with that, but
Knowing what your guys' intentions would be to allow that with the same restrictions of the waiver and whatnot, because your original resolution says if you're shoring the building that you would, people shoring the building were allowed in, but so that would prohibit Rosalie and any of her helpers from helping her get the area cleaned out. So you would need to amend the resolution and changing the time frame for which she would be able to do that, because the time frame in the second resolution is over. So you would need to have a special meeting, and maybe it wouldn't take long if you tell me what you're wanting in there for it to be drafted.
Well, one of the concerns that I would have is unlimited access at this juncture, because right now the building has still been declared an unsafe structure, and we definitely know we have a problem there. If anything, for however long Ms. Hofstetter believes it will take her to get that done, I think, that limited time frame should be applied there. And I would stipulate that daylight hours only and those type of deals, like pretty much what we had.
Okay.
I would recommend that, one, you have the city attorney look at contracts in the meantime, but you could pass tonight authorizing the enforcing officer to make the building available to the contractor, to the architect, for the purpose of making those determinations and drawing up those plans. I don't know at this point in time that they need to move anything out in preparation for that. Like, if I understood Ms. Hofstetter right, once they gain access and make their measurements and stuff and see what needs to be done, then they can tell her what needs to be moved out, and then you can make it available for that if anything needs to be moved out. If all that is against the south and west side of the building, has been indicated, Ms. Hofstetter has said that they don't use that part of the building because of the safety factor, so they may not have to move anything out to gain access, but there wouldn't be any need to create a lot of work for her that's unnecessary at this point until they get in there and are able to see what the situation is, what does need to be moved. But, go ahead and authorize the enforcement to allow access to the contractor, to the engineer, to the architect as needed and as reasonable. And, you know, if they can give us at least 24 hours notice, we can make sure that keys are available, somebody's available to give them access.
What about the outside area, the back that she's talking about? Because she needs to clean out that back area so that they can get their trucks
That's what they-
on the outside,
that's
not on
what
the
they can
inside.
determine.
They probably won't need that the first.
Yeah.
But they will
Yeah.
tell
That's
me
true.
the
That's
interior
true.
that has to be moved out too.
At this point in time, nothing has to be moved, but when they get to that point where they start to go in to do the renovations, then we can allow access to that if necessary.
Well, Chief, I guess I'm misunderstanding what Mrs. Hostetler is saying, that in the aspect that there is potential for items to be moved inside the motel, so an assessment by the engineer can be made. Have I misunderstood that?
It's
No.
my understanding that they just need access for measurements and inspection.
Yeah.
And they can do that without doing a lot of moving or removal.
Well, I would.
And that would limit the access to as little as possible. And I would agree that whoever does make access also has to read and sign the engineer reports and waivers, just like everybody else up to this point has.
And
But I
would.
do think the city attorney needs to look at the documents presented, and make sure that, you know, we have, the legal standing or.
For the assessment.
Right.
Well, I would agree with Chief Murphy on that, to allow him to have that access or that latitude as the code enforcement compliance officer to do that, provided, as Chief Murphy is in agreement that they sign the waivers.
So we're going to wait till they get here for them to sign the waivers, or is that what you're wanting to do?
Yeah,
Okay,
As long as they're assigned.
if they show up 2
Prior
days
to.
from now
right,
and want access,
and they can,
they can read it and sign it at that
Okay.
point in time, and then we can allow access.
okay,
And then if they make certain recommendations on what needs to be removed,
right.
then we
And
can
then
allow
have a
time,
plan, or has to.
have a plan, a written plan, and
Okay.
allow time for access to it to make whatever stuff needs to be moved to get
Right.
moved so that they can do whatever they're going to do.
Okay.
And I would also recommend that at some point in time, the bond fund provide the city with financial records that show that the funds are available for the work that's being proposed, so that we don't.
We don't
get into
reveal our
situations.
donors. Our donors are very private. We do not reveal those.
Okay, but we have to be sure that the contractor is going to get paid for what they're doing, otherwise if we put up scaffolding and don't have any work done because there's no money.
But if they've signed a contract, isn't that the same thing? If they've signed a contract?
Yeah, then they bring their own. You have nothing to do with it.
That's what I'm saying.
I believe what Chief Murphy is alluding to, and I was getting ready to go with that direction too, Chief, and that is the fact that even though we get the assessment and we see that this building is, can be salvaged and things like that, a good timeline of what would be taking place, I think should be part of our consideration as we proceed on with this in the avenue. And I don't believe that Chief is asking for individual names of the donor, and I would not want that either. But it would be nice to be assured that the financial backing is there to continue the progress of restoration of the hotel, continue and show that there could be progress, that if it takes, and I'm gonna throw a number out here because I am not a construction engineer, if it's gonna take 6 months, 2 years, 3 years down the road, and this is the progress in the phases, like Mrs. Hostetler has said earlier, this is step number 1. Okay, what's phase 2? What's phase 3? What's phase 4? And when will we have
And when
for
you
lack
get
of
to
a
the
better word, the
construction,
grand opening of the
the
hotel?
construction and renovation part, if that's going to cost as an example, $100,000, and phase one of that construction is $10,000, and that gets paid, but there's no more funds for the rest of it, it's left in limbo, and we have the scaffolding and no progress.
I think we've gotten just a little bit off task here. The question tonight is whether or not the city council is going to allow Richard Crable inside the building to make the inspection. And the rest of this is, well, I don't feel it's for tonight's meeting, but that's just my personal opinion. Perhaps, Ms. Hostetler, you could have Richard Crable contact the city clerk's office. It might speed things up, and let Tiffany know if there is anything inside that building that needs to be cleaned out. If there is a room that he needs specific access to. If there is a
You
certain.
mean ahead of time?
Ahead of time, yes.
Yeah, I'll ask him.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll see if he needs it.
Because if there is damage to a corner of a wall and there's a large buffet or something in the way, I want him to be able to get in there to it.
But when,
So he probably won't know that until he
sees,
it.
yeah.
He may not, but he may.
But the engineer, he and I can move it.
But communication would definitely not hurt a bit.
That's all we're asking, is that they just want to come in, take the measurements, assess it, get the drawings made, the engineer professional drawings, which then will go to Ted Fryhoff. Then he will come down again, his second visit, and then he goes from there.
Okay.
So my last question, or my last comment would be two. One, and Mrs. Hostetler, you're willing to keep the council informed of the process as we go through this step by step?
Yeah, it'll all be documented.
But would you be able to provide that to the council?
Yeah, we'll document it. We'll give you the paper, just like this.
Okay.
I'll bring you papers.
The other thing then, Tiffany, what do you need from us to make this happen tonight?
From what I've got from you, I have a motion, and Jan can read it, and you guys pick it apart if you see something in error. But the way it's written, because of the original resolution that allowed for people doing the shoring or, stabilizing the wall, you guys already authorized that in the first resolution, so I don't think this will have an issue.
I have a motion to authorize the enforcing officer to allow access to 121 West Main by architect, engineer, and contractor for measurements and inspection, to design restorations to the structure after each person has read each inspection report and signed waiver of liability.
I think I understand it, but I'll second it.
Okay, Brandy, have a second?
Dawn did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dawn. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried 6-0.